whether we realize it or not. We will talk about suicide and mental health struggles, as they are not just statistics, they are real people. Mental health, however, is not just a personal issue, it is a society one. It affects our community, and it's important to know that on average, 46% of persons will get a major psychiatric disorder during their lives. For far too long, this has been surrounded by stigma. Thankfully, VSA, the World Bank, NRPB, and Trimbus are helping us to improve mental health on our island. However, at current, the budget for mental health per person is still labeled lower compared to our neighboring islands. We cannot afford to keep ignoring the crisis that is unfolding before us. So today, we come together to face it head on and follow up on solutions. Now, let's talk a little bit about the reality of suicide and mental health on St. Martin. Suicide is the tragic endpoint of deep personal struggles, overwhelming circumstances, or mental illnesses. It is not just about sadness, it's about despair, hopelessness, and a feeling of isolation, and the constant rumination of not getting a major problem off one's mind. The reality is that many will die by suicide, many that have died by suicide have never received the mental care that they needed. Some were too afraid to seek help, others did not know where to turn, and some faced obstacles that made accessing care impossible. In St. Martin, the hidden demand for mental health care is significant, and we are only seeing the tip of the iceberg. Only a fraction of those struggling with mental health conditions seek professional help. The reasons vary, but by stigma, self-judgment, lack of awareness, misconceptions, financial barriers, and insufficient mental health infrastructure all play a role. First things first, society must first solve poverty, because poverty is one of the major contributing factors to mental health issues. If persons' basic needs aren't met, it will impact their mental health severely. We must now understand that mental health and society both offer a shared responsibility. Mental health is just not a concern by those affected, but it impacts everyone. When individuals struggle with untreated mental illnesses, it affects their families, their workplaces, and society. For example, productivity declines, relationship suffers, and the healthcare system becomes a burden with the crises that could have been prevented with early intervention. According to PAHO's statement, there is no health without mental health. This implies that mental well-being should be a priority, and this requires a collective effort from government leaders, healthcare professionals, community organizations, businesses, and all that are involved, including ourselves. Now, let's talk a little bit about what are the challenges here that we encounter here on St. Martin. Despite the progress in raising awareness, several challenges continue to hinder the effective mental health care on our island, St. Martin. First of all, we struggle with limited mental health resources. For example, at the Mental Health Foundation, there are far too little mental health professionals to help with the growing demand. For example, the number of psychiatrists, psychologists, and psychiatric beds available to offer the services and the demand that we have. Then we have persistent stigma and cultural barriers. Many still believe that seeking help is a sign of weakness. This stigma prevents individuals from reaching out for support. Then we have financial and structural barriers. Many individuals simply cannot afford mental health care, and insurance oftentimes do not offer adequate treatment in private practices. Additionally, the lack of inpatient facilities limits options for those in crises. Then we have substance abuse and addiction. The high social acceptance of alcohol and drug use contributes to many mental health issues. Yet, addiction is still not legally recognized as a disease, making it harder to provide adequate care. And finally, lack of early intervention, education, and empowerment. Schools and workplaces cannot provide enough mental health education, leaving individuals unprepared to recognize symptoms and seek help early. Now we may ask, what is St. Martin Mental Health System doing? Now, we here at the Mental Health Foundation have been actively working to combat these challenges. For example, we have been working on increasing awareness, reducing our waiting time by hiring more clinicians, and have modernized the treatment with advanced psychotherapies and medications that produce less side effects. There is also a growing focus on mental health into general healthcare facilities so that individuals can receive support earlier and more conveniently. Training nurses, conducting community sessions, and integrating mental health support with local networks have proven to be highly effective strategies. So we have positioned ourselves by ensuring to provide more care, more trainings to various persons within the community. However, despite our efforts, more inpatient care still is needed in order to provide the necessary care to our community. Now let's look a little bit at what other countries have been doing to improve their mental health care. For example, in the Netherlands, they have integrated more mental health care in primary practices. Australia have heavily invested in suicide prevention programs, community-based crisis responses team, and focused on early intervention. In Canada, mental health literacy programs have actually been embedded into the school programs from an early age, which has reduced stigma and has built a more supportive society. And in the USA now has an aspect of teletherapy, whereby mental health is now recognized in work policies and have proven to be an important enhancement. These examples show that solutions exist. We can learn from these initiatives and adapt them to fit St. Martin's unique cultural and economic landscape. Now, let's look at what could be done for mental health and suicide on our island. Solving our mental health crisis will require a multifaceted approach. Here's what we must do. First of all, let's focus on expanding the mental health infrastructure. For example, by investing in more psychiatric beds, inpatient facilities, community-based mental health care services. For example, thus far the mental health has begun expanding such, for example, by working together with the social services department. So many of us, we actually go into the communities and offer mental health services by the various help desks. So this is something that we as psychologists do, but this is also something that can be done on a more global scale amongst other professionals as well too, so that persons can feel more comfortable receiving the care and that they don't per se have to come to a mental health facility or a private psychologist. For example, persons can receive more care within their communities. Also, we can go about doing such by increasing awareness and education. For example, by teaching mental health literacy in schools and workplaces to reduce stigma and encourage early intervention. We can also do this by improving access to care, as indicated earlier. And then finally, address substance abuse, recognizing that addiction is a disease and provide more rehabilitation and prevention programs. Now let's talk about a way forward addressing suicide prevention. We must first understand that suicide is complex and cannot be addressed through a single preventative intervention at only one level. Our recommendations emphasize this complexity as an important intervention at different levels. The different levels are universal, which represent the entire population. Then we have a selective approach, which specifies, for example, specific target groups. And then finally, an indicated approach, which represents specific individuals with suicidality. For an island like St. Martin, the coordination efforts across the different levels can help address the suicide effectively. So I'll now give some examples on each level. From a universal perspective, the audience, for example, then represents the entire population of St. Martin. So how we can address it on an overall basis to the entire St. Martin is, for example, by increasing public awareness. For example, the government and local organizations can run media campaigns through TV, radio, social media to raise awareness about mental health, stress management, and reduce and increase available resources for suicide prevention. Then we can also go about it, for example, by training first responders. For example, by providing training for the police officers, firefighters, teachers, and other first responders to first of all recognize the signs of mental distress and suicidality, and also how to respond to such appropriately. Then let's go a little bit to talk a little bit about the selective prevention, which represents a targeted audience. For example, the at-risk groups. The targeted audience can be, for example, by working together with specific groups such as adolescents, elderly persons, substance abuse persons who struggle with substance abuse, or persons who have experienced trauma. These groups can be identified through schools, healthcare providers, and community organizations. We can also address these, for example, through screening and early intervention. We can go ahead by conducting mental health screeners in schools, workplaces, and healthcare settings to identify individuals who may be struggling with thoughts of suicide or even mental health issues.
Are you SXM insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXM is cardless. Request your My SXM account today and enter the virtual office of SXM. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
SXM, yeah. Your social health insurances.
Suicide prevention and mental health. Suicide is a major global issue, claiming many lives every year, and I think my colleague said a lot. In the United States of America, suicide is one of the leading causes of death, especially among young people, according to the WHO, the World Health Organization. More than 700,000 people commit suicide each year, and rates among young people have increased significantly over the last decade. Behind these startling statistics are lives, families, and friends who feel the impact of the loss. Without a doubt, suicide prevention is vital. St. Martin has also seen an increase in suicide over the last few years, with social issues and the resultant mental health problems on the rise. Urgent community intervention is required. People are most motivated to end their lives when they believe that there is no hope left in their current circumstances and that there is nothing they can do to improve themselves. Suicide is frequently caused by depression, substance misuse, financial issues, traumatic experiences, bullying, unemployment, interpersonal issues, a lot. So a lot of it is from social issues, and which we do have. Dr. Lambert spoke a lot about the issues. I'm going to go into the proposed solution to the current issues. Number one, mental health resources must be given top priority. Support for mental health should be a regular part of life, not something that should only be provided during times of crisis. We should normalize discussion about mental health in schools and workplaces. Early instruction and coping mechanism, emotional well-being, and the value of getting help can influence students' view about mental health for the rest of their lives. Organizations can develop work-life balance rule, offer private counseling services, and train managers on mental well-being. People are more likely to seek help when they need it, when psychological treatment is integrated within their organization. Workplaces and educational institutions frequently emphasize on performance and great results. However, mental health is what gives those things their sustainability. Stress worsens without the right support, which can result in disengagement, burnout, depression, and even suicide. Real cultural transformation occurs when emotional self-care is viewed as an integral component of both work and education rather than the disruption of one or the other. Stigma. We speak a lot about stigma, but stigma still has to be decreased. Though it manifests differently in each culture, stigma around mental health issue is evident everywhere. Therapy is either unheard of or within some groups viewed as a sign of weakness in others. And the reason why this is here is that St. Martin have so many different cultures, and what I've recognized in dealing with some persons, especially when we're looking at the Haitian culture, something happened last week, but it's something that keep happening. What I've realized is that they don't quite understand mental illnesses. So they will see it happen in their families, but will be unable to pinpoint exactly what it is. As recent as last week, someone had suicidal ideation, and the mom said, I have to take my daughter to the doctor because she had fever and I think it went to her head. So all of these things we have to look into. Social reaction to mental health problem and treatment greatly influence help-seeking behaviors of those within the community. Without normalizing mental health intervention, harmful self-soothing behavior become more common, leading to additional issues such as substance misuse and its resulting negative impact on mental health. Effort must be also made to ensure intervention and culturally sensitive to avoid further misconception about the effectiveness of mental health treatment. Translating and adapting material are some ways to overcome these barriers by developing digital platforms that give therapy in several languages or linking consumers with therapists familiar with our culture differences. Technology can also bridge gaps where traditional programs fall short, making mental health care more approachable for those who might otherwise feel excluded. Now, we got to speak about social issues, and social issues that impact mental health must be addressed. Poor mental health is a result of underlying issues, many of which arise due to deficiencies within our community, proper economical support and condition heavily impact households. Affecting the mental health of parents, an impact is done as well to their children. So we see a lot of children carrying the burden of their parents, the social issues that are felt in a household. This can impact exposure to things such as abuse or increase risky behaviors that can lead to both mental illnesses and crime. Affordability and accessibility regarding mental health treatment also impact help-seeking behaviors. Now, Dr. Lambert spoke about just now addiction. Addiction in our law is not seen as a mental illness. All right, so one of the things that we want to curb is, well, one of the things that we want to fix is our legislation where addiction is seen as a mental illness, because that's how it is in the rest of the world. Addiction is a mental illness. Intervention for issues such as substance abuse disorder should be accessible to low-income communities who may already lack sufficient education regarding mental health and its appropriate treatment. What preventative measure must be put in place? Strong prevention campaigns. Teach coping mechanism and how to solve problems in school and in the workplace. Make mental health and addiction a part of our school curriculum. Encourage social emotional education initiative. Strengthen family ties. Provide parenting skills. Encourage resilience by means of education. As parents or family members, we must foster a culture of dialogue around this topic, helping people find a sense of purpose or strengthening their connection to spiritual beliefs as well. Finding a purpose contributes to improve mental health and emotional health. Create programs and place to maintain community wellness. We all have a responsibility to prevent suicide within our community. It is not only up to the professionals. It can mean the difference between life and death if we pay attention, offer support, and act when we see warning signs in our loved ones. There is hope and support available if you or someone you know is having difficulties coping with life. One of the questions that was asked by the committee was to explore and bridge the gap, find out like the correlation between the correlation between violence, crime, substance abuse, and suicide. Alcohol and drug use disorder have been found to be strongly associated with the risk of suicide. Although it is challenging to assess the relative influence of mental illnesses on the risk of suicide, one potentially significant risk factor for suicide among substance abusers is their tendency to turn towards violence. About 75% of those who start addiction treatment say they have acted violently, which is physical or attacking others with weapons or robbery, because of the substance use. Additionally, recent studies suggest that relationship between substance misuse and suicide risk may partially be explained by violence, the way they express themselves. Behavioral issues are associated as well. The type of individuals in our community who commit crimes because of mental illnesses can be separated into 3 categories: those who have a mental health problem with symptoms and behaviors that increase the risky behaviors, those who commit crime under the influence of substance, and those with both mental health and substance abuse problem that intensify their symptoms and behavior. Those with mental illness who sometimes use drugs and have antisocial personality traits or disorder are more likely to conduct crime like rape, trespassing, theft, and murder. Schizophrenia patients may also harm others by acting on their delusion, and the danger is significantly increased by co-occurring substance abuse or dependence. When we, as a community, observe that someone is a threat to the community, we can decide to assist and guide them immediately instead of waiting for the crime to be committed. Persons within these high-risk groups require intervention long before the resulting arrest. Since these individuals already struggle with issues such as isolation, rejection, and the general disconnect from society, when they enter prison, rehabilitation is fundamental to avoid issues of recidivism. If appropriate treatment is not provided and their minds are not changed to alter their behavior, the core issue cannot be addressed, leading to a continuous crime and second chance, second, third, and fourth offenders. Turning Point can serve as the ideal illustration. Most of our clients have multiple diagnoses and enter the legal system because of these unresolved issues. Many cases involve criminal activities, exemplifying the direct effect of mental illnesses and substance abuse problem.
It is my great pleasure to welcome United States Secretary of State, the Honorable Marco Rubio, to Jamaica. Now, I have known Secretary of State Rubio for some time, and I've always been very impressed by his deep knowledge of the region. Jamaica is deeply honored that you have chosen to visit us first on your official visit to the English-speaking Caribbean. This visit so early in your term confirms the strength of historic friendship and strategic partnership between Jamaica and the United States, one built on shared values, democratic ideals, and people-to-people ties. Our nations have long been united by a common commitment to freedom, prosperity, and security, and your visit today reaffirms this bond. Today, we engaged in productive and constructive discussions focused on strengthening this partnership and expanding opportunities for collaboration. During our meeting, we addressed several critical areas of cooperation. Security, one major area. We reaffirmed our commitment to enhancing cooperation in combating transnational crime, ensuring the collective safety of our citizens, and mutually secured borders. We discussed a global war on gangs, and there is already significant policy alignment with both countries in this regard. The United States has been instrumental in supporting Jamaica's efforts to bolster its marine domain awareness and intelligence surveillance capabilities, which are crucial in our fight against organized criminal networks. We discussed expanded and repurposing development assistance towards our shared goals, including security. This will exponentially expand our cooperation in fighting lottery scammers, transnational organized crimes, trafficking in guns, and building safer communities.
We have a shared history that's tied together by people. I also would say that some substantial percentage of Americans have traveled here at some point in their lives, and that also binds countries together. Nothing binds countries and cultures more closely together than people, and we certainly have that in common, and we want to continue to make sure that we build on that. We did touch on a couple of topics. The first is trade. The world has been closely followed. The President is in the midst of realigning American global trade policy, primarily to reset global trade in a way that's fair to the U.S. after 20 or 30 years of what we believe is unfairness, not when it comes to Jamaica, but broader. And from that will come real opportunities to create new alignments and new trade arrangements and new trade opportunities. And I believe Jamaica is one of those places that together we both stand to benefit. In particular, we discussed supply chains. And we ask ourselves, why, if so many of these products are destined for the North American market, why are so many of the productive capacities located halfway around the world? And there's a lot of different reasons why that's happened. But it makes all the sense in the world to see more productive capacity, more manufacturing, more industry relocated into our hemisphere. We certainly have the labor and the population and the desire to do so in our hemisphere. It's closer to the end markets. And so we want to pursue opportunities to make that possible. And clearly, I think Jamaica is one of those places that could benefit. And the Prime Minister has that vision for the country and the creation of not just jobs, but jobs that pay even better than the jobs that maybe some could find now. So it's an opportunity I think would be mutually beneficial, and we're going to actively seek and look for ways to make that possible. I also think there's extraordinary opportunities for investment, and we talked about it, whether it's particularly in energy. The United States is going to be producing a lot of liquefied natural gas, which is a very clean fuel that we have in abundance and that we seek to export. And it's also critical, by the way. You cannot have manufacturing without reliable and affordable energy. And so it's one of those things that I think potentially we could continue to partner along with other things, whether it's mining opportunities off the seabed. In essence, to utilize all of the resources of the country in a responsible way that protects your environment, that protects your natural beauty, but at the same time is generating income and opportunity of employment for the people. Ultimately, governments have two prime responsibilities: the safety and the prosperity of their people.
Your social and health insurance is your social and health insurances.
Are you SXV insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXV is cardless. Request your My SXV account today and enter the virtual office of SXV. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
Your social and health insurances.
It's time for a new brand that is as bold, vibrant, and colorful as the island of St. Martin, with colors drawn from our diversity, cultural heritage, and nature. Our breathtaking beaches, waters, and sun, the majestic brown pelican, our national symbol, the radiant yellow sage, our national flower, the historic border monument signifying the Dutch and French sides, our exciting cruise, yachting, and boating ports, renowned Maho Beach and St. Martin Airport, the hub to the Caribbean. All these parts come together to create the shape of the island of St. Martin. More than a logo. It's a new brand that engages, excites, and will inspire travelers to book. It's time to tell the St. Martin story, to reintroduce travelers to St. Martin, to honor our past, to embrace our present, and shape our future. Our culture and diversity, Dutch and French sides, unrivaled cuisine, twice the nightlife, entertainment, and shopping, cruises, boating, and yachting, twice the adventure, exploration, and relaxation, splendid and scenic accommodations, Pinel, Tentamar, and island hopping in the Caribbean. Whatever your taste, St. Martin has more. Experience twice the Caribbean. St. Martin.
It is with profound sorrow that I address you today in the wake of another tragic incident that has shaken me and indeed many across our nation to the core. Last night, an innocent child lost his life, having been caught in the crossfire of senseless violence. His name is Jonathan Chase. Let us remember it. A young life full of promise, extinguished prematurely. It was only 7 months ago that I stood before you heartbroken over a similar incident where a 12-year-old girl was wounded equally in Silver Hill. At that time, I begged each of you to step up, to recognize that this battle against violence cannot be won by the police alone or the government alone or any single entity alone. My people, it requires a collective effort from all of us. And yet here we are again, mourning a child, another family devastated, another community shaken, a country crying. I say it all the time, guns do not walk, nor do they talk. They are wielded by people who choose to settle disputes through violence rather than through dialogue. To those who believe that guns are the answer, I beseech you, I beg you to consider the innocent lives that you are endangering. You were not brought into this world to do this. To the mothers, the fathers, the sisters, the brothers, the friends, the grandmothers, the grandparents, the godparents, anybody, somebody on the brink of making these choices, bring them back, intervene, talk with them, have the difficult but necessary conversations, encourage them to put down the weapons, my people, and seek peaceful resolutions. We cannot allow our beloved Barbados to become a place where our children are no longer safe or no longer feel safe, where elderly people also don't feel safe, where laughter is silenced by gunfire, and where families suffer the devastating pain and anguish that is inconsolable. Conflict, my friends, yes, is an inevitable part of life from the beginning of humanity. But violence is not and has never been the solution. We must teach and demonstrate alternative ways to resolve our differences. Together, we have to find ways to avoid this loss and this heartache. And it is not beyond us as a people, I tell you, it is not beyond us as a people to do it. There must still be things in this world that are sacred, places that are off limits, moments that are not to be violated, and above all else, our children, our future, our sons and our daughters must remain untouched by the madness that is seeking to tear our communities apart. There's enough madness in this world, we don't need to have it here. A child should never have to run from gunfire, should never be caught in the crosshairs of vengeance, should never have their laughter silenced by bullets. And if we can't agree on anything else, let us agree on this. Our children are not and must never be our targets. They're not to be collateral damage. Our children and our elderly are the lines that we must never cross. And we have to come to a pack in this country about it.